Okay, algorithm. This is the uplift where we discover the deeper realities that influence our thoughts, our feelings, and our choices. In other words, everything that's in our daily lives. We believe fully that if we see what it is that's happening and where it's happening, we believe that we can learn how to be intentional and to see what's possible. All right, so that's what it is that we do here on the uplift. Folks, people don't come here for what it is that they already know. No, they come here for the moment because the moment is where things start to make sense. Listen, this is real growth, clear direction that is expanding what's possible for you. All right. So I appreciate everybody for being here. It's wonderful to be here talking about what the topic that we're going to discuss today, because I think a lot of people can benefit from it. Right. And that is that we're going to discuss our sides of our story, right? We're this week we're talking about the sides of our story and the stories that we live by, right? The stories that we live by. What we now know is that even with a two-person story, there's more than just two sides of the story, right? Now, obviously, there's going to be the factual side, so there's automatically going to be three sides to the story. Then we learned before last week, and also when it was brought up to be requested to be talked about this week, we learned that there are three sides to every story for each person. Three sides to every story for each person. There is the appraisal, there is the interpretation, and then there is the emotional attachment. Okay? So we are going to discuss today the appraisal. We're going to be talking about the appraisal, that what it is that I call the auto response, right? It's the auto response of how it is that we determine what something, whether it be an event or a conversation, and its emotional significance to us. So I appreciate everybody for being here. We're going to have a lot of, you know, a lot of different thoughts about how people react to things, how people react to conversations, how people react to events, how people react to being hit by the blind side. One of the affirmations that I put out this week was, if you want to have a game changer, go ahead and realize that you don't have to use yesterday's thoughts for today's decisions. You don't have to use yesterday's thoughts for today's decisions. And what that means is that we carry over our emotional attachments to things. We carry them over. And when we do that, we literally are having that influence what it is that we're doing today. And we're going to be talking about that and why. Shauna, wonderful to see you. Spice Chili is wonderful to see you. Love the name. So let's go ahead and get some of our friends in here. And we'll go. Let's see. Let's get Joe. Let's get Terry. We got Shauno, Jules. Let's go ahead and get Shy Girl, Lisa, Insomnia. Okay. Tommy, Jenny. Oh, we definitely got to get Jenny because I want to make sure to have Jenny know that she is a priority today. All right. So when we're talking about the neuroscience and how things work, it's important to understand why it is that we react in the way that we do, right? It's important to understand that there is a deeper reality, and that's what this show is all about. It's about deeper realities to see what influences our thoughts, what influences our feelings, what influences our choices, right? And today, we're going to talk about that underlying deeper reality of the appraisal of our realization to a conversation, to an event. That is something that a lot of people don't even think about. Good morning, Shy Girl. Wonderful to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your support. as you've given, for quite a while, and I appreciate that a great deal. So we're going to discuss that deeper reality. And it's important to understand that this is not about judgment in any way. This is merely shedding light to the awareness of what it is that is creating us to react in the way that we do. It's also to give you the opportunity to learn what's possible, to learn what's possible, to understand it a little bit differently so that you can put a little bit of a different disruptor and take some intentionality into your decision making that can make a big difference in your life. Not only today, immediately, but also overall. And so this is not here to be judgmental in any way. This is not to say, you know what, this is what it is that you're doing, and that's why it is that you're a jerk. You know, that's not what it is that we're doing at all. It's important to understand that each and every one of us is individual. Each and every one of us has a unique experience in this life, right? We have a unique journey in this life. Not one of us are the exact same. I'll be back on my way to the doctor. Okay, appreciate you for being here. I appreciate you a great deal. So when you're sitting there and you're thinking about judging someone, this show will give you some pause in doing that, right? It'll give you some pause. Not only is it not nice to judge someone, but it may not be accurate. It may not be accurate at all because what we know about the way that society is today, that action reaction, is that the reaction that you see or that you plan on judging someone by is based off of a secondary emotion. A secondary emotion, not the primary emotion. Because the primary emotion is one that is vulnerable and one that is not going to be shown very often. So literally, you'll be judging someone based off of the secondary emotion that's driving their reaction. And so what ends up happening is that, you know, we're literally making decisions with limited information or with inaccurate information, right? I had a situation yesterday, right, that I'm going to discuss today in regards to that, right? And you'll find how it is that the way that a story starts and ends is complex. It builds over time, but it doesn't take very long to do. So this is what it is that we're going to discuss today. The very beginning of our response is our appraisal, right? Our appraisal is where we literally are utilizing our first auto response to be able to determine, is this safe? Is it safe? Is it unsafe? Is this new? Is this different? Is this familiar? Right? It's going to be the auto response to our reaction to things. So, and this is something that I think can help a lot of people. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and get started today. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. Listen, this is the uplift. Listen, people don't come here for what it is that they already know. No, instead, they come here for the moment because it's the moment where things start to make sense. And that, I fully believe, if you can see clearly, well, you can be more intentional. And being intentional shows you the responsibilities as well as the possibilities. Listen, this is real growth, clear direction, expanding what's possible for you, okay? All right, it needs to be said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, all right? I am somebody who utilizes my own personal experiences as well as my professional career as being a medical researcher and somebody who's been doing this for quite some time. I've been doing this for over 15 years. I've pursued studying neuroscience. I've pursued studying behavioral patterns. This is something that I've been doing for quite a while. And this allows me to be able to also learn different approaches because everybody learns from a different way. I help the person while the professionals treat the patient. I'm not here to replace, I'm not here to judge or anything like that when it comes to any medical professional whatsoever. This is not about medical advice. It's about something that's deeper than that. It's something about the person. And I've always been somebody about the person rather than the patient or the client. Okay? So that's where it is that I fall into. I help the person while the professionals treat the patient. Jules, wonderful to see you this morning. Okay. Have you ever had a situation? Good morning. Wonderful to see you. Have you ever had a situation where you had a start of a conversation with someone and then immediately while they're talking to you, you kind of turned off. You kind of turned off from what the words are coming out of their mouth, but you're fully engaged in what's going on, right? You're kind of turned off from what it is that the words are coming out of their mouth, but you're fully engaged into the conversation, right? Have you ever had a situation where somebody said, "Hey, I need to talk to you," and then just walk away? Have you ever had a situation where a circumstance where all of a sudden, it's like somebody would sit there and it's like they want to be loud, right? They got the music just jamming. They got the music just screaming and everything is funny and everybody's having a party, right? Everybody's enjoying themselves. Everybody is, you know, really and having a good time. You ever have that situation where you were there watching everybody have a good time, but you weren't feeling the same way? Did you ever have a situation where you were finding yourself wondering if you're like walking into, like, say, the woods, or if you're even in a parking lot, right? We use the analogy of a parking lot a couple times, where you are in the woods or in a parking lot, and then all of a sudden you hear a noise, right? You hear a noise, and then all starts to happen immediately. Now, we know that our brain is pretty damn amazing. We know the brain and the nervous system is pretty amazing. Wildcat, wonderful to see you this morning. We also know that this thing happens like that. We know that it happens just like that. It's quick. It's before your brain, or your mind, I should say, your mindset even catches up, right? Folks, I appreciate all the heart meets. I appreciate all of them. Make sure to go ahead and make a comment. Let me know where it is that you're watching from. Let me know, how it is that you're doing today. And then make sure to get your plus points up at the top. Also, I ask for you to reset with us. There is a picture in the upper left hand corner. Go ahead and unfollow me there if you're following me, and then refollow me. And if you aren't following me as of yet, I ask that you go ahead and follow me, because I think that you'll benefit from the things that it is that I provide, and I'd love to be able to connect with you. Okay, so those three questions that I asked you, those three questions that I asked you are something that happens in everyday life, right? And when we were talking about the two sides to every story, or the three sides to a two-person story, we learned that really there's even more than just two or three. In fact, we actually uncovered there's seven different sides to a two-person story, because each person that involved in that story has, number one, the appraisal, number two, the interpretation, and number three, the emotional attachment, which carries it a lot longer than what it is that it maybe was meant to be. So when we're talking about the appraisal today, I'm going to relate it to being our auto response. It's our auto response. Christy, wonderful to see you this morning. So when we have our auto response, this is something that happens instantly. Instantly. If somebody says, "Hey, I need to talk to you," and they walk away, it all depends on what it is that you've experienced in your past. It all depends on what it is that experience that you've had that had emotions that may be something similar that was said, right? "Hey, I need to talk to you." Well, if somebody is sitting there and they have had a pretty fortunate life, and they, are friends with a person, and it's like, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll be there for you, no problem. I got you," right? Like, very, upbeat and positive. "I've got you. Don't worry about it. No worries," right? Another person might hear, "Hey, I need to talk to you," and in their mindset immediately is, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Like, is this about me or is this about someone else?" Right? Like all of a sudden now you have a two totally different scenarios. You got one that's upbeat and positive and ready to support. Good morning, Jenny. Wonderful to see you. Speaking about support, love you. I appreciate you a great deal. You have one that's upbeat and positive and ready to support. You have another one who's sitting there and asking the question, "What did I do wrong?" Or what is it? Is this about me or is it about someone else? Right? Immediately, this is your auto response. Now, remember where it is that our emotions are being held. Our emotions, and this isn't the neuroscience, but this is the reality of our humanism, is that our emotions are being held by our inner child. Our inner child. And I shared yesterday, and I've shared before, that I'm a 55-year-old man. My inner child, emotional age, is in the teens. And that's after I worked with it for a good while, right? It's in the teens. Well, you can imagine that there's going to be a difference between the response of a young teenager to a 55-year-old man, a full-fledged adult, right? There's going to be, or at least you expect there to be, a difference between those two things. One is going to be emotional. The other one is going to be more logical, right? The other one's going to be more practical. Right? The adult, hopefully, is going to be more logical and practical. Maybe not all the time, but hopefully that's going to be the case. The young teenager is going to be emotional because they don't have that logic yet. They haven't searched for the logic yet. They haven't experienced enough in order to be able to know that this is logical, this is practical, no worries, don't worry about it. As a 55-year-old man who is a physical adult and also has the experiences of an adult, and yet my emotional age is in the teens, right? Now, some people may think, well, I may be less intelligent than that. That's not the case at all. It has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has to do with your emotion, right? In other words, your emotion has at some point in time slowed down from your physical age. At some point in time, your emotional age slowed down from your physical age, right? So what occurs is that there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. We're looking at each other, right? We're looking at each other for what it is that we see. We're looking at each other for what it is that we hear. We're looking at each other for what it is that we expect. Lisa, wonderful to see you this morning. When we're looking at each other from those lenses, we may be surprised to learn somebody's reaction. We may be surprised to learn somebody's reaction. Why? Because what it is that we're seeing, hearing, and expecting is something that appears like on the surface. But as you know, this show is all about the deeper realities. So the deeper reality is that somebody's emotional age could be significantly younger than their physical one, right? And so when we're talking about our appraisal, we have to understand that our auto response in that appraisal is not going to be all the time what we would expect to see from the reaction of another person. Because we have to understand that it all depends on how it is that their life or their journey has gone, right? If somebody was to come to me and say, "Oh, we're going rock climbing, right? We're going rock climbing. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to, man, I'll tell you what, somebody's going to sit there and they're going to be like really hyped up. And it's like, what do you think about rock climbing? And they're thinking about, this is going to be adventurous. This is going to be life changing. This is going to be something, it's a lifetime experience. This is going to be, I don't know, physical. It's going to be competitive, whatever it is. Whatever that comes to someone, they're upbeat, they're positive. When somebody mentions rock climbing to me, My auto response is my dear friend Ronnie passed away in a rock climbing incident. And it happened to be something that happened to also be part of unalive awareness. And I was aware that he was going through those types of things at the time. So I have an entirely different reaction or response, auto response, to the words rock climbing. Now, we're going to talk about tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the interpretation. We're going to talk about the interpretation. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate that. We're going to be talking about the interpretation of this, right? Now, I can go ahead and then I can utilize my skill set and I can utilize my maturity and I can utilize, the what is now versus yesterday differently, right? I can utilize that differently so as to be able to then discuss it from a different standpoint, right? As rather than looking at it from the standpoint that my dear friend passed away in a rock climbing incident, in the interpretation piece, I could look at it from saying, not everybody passes away when they go rock climbing, right? I can literally go about it in that logical aspect. But my auto response is my dear friend passed away in a rock climbing incident. When somebody says, hey, I need to talk to you, you have somebody on one side who's going to be, oh, yeah, I'm there for you. I got you. Don't worry about it. We'll work it out. Upbeat, positive, no problem. Another person may get a different response, right? Another person's thinking, well, is this about me? Did I do something wrong? you know, what do I need? Why do we need to talk about it? Whatever the case may be. That's your auto response because you're a little bit confused. You've had a few different incidences where, hey, I need to talk to you could be interesting, right? For instance, I had a situation, right? Well, I won't even go into that situation from yesterday, but I'll talk about something previous. I watched, hey, I need to talk to you in the office environment from a boss to an employee. Hey, I need to talk to you. Well, okay. Somebody who is positive and upbeat and wants to be helpful and everything, they may be thinking, hey, okay, fine, no worries. It's like I'm there for you. It's like maybe there's a new project that I need to do, or maybe I'm going to get maybe I'm going to get a raise. Maybe I'm going to get something that I've been working for a long time. Somebody who may be a little bit less upbeat and less positive may be saying, oh boy, this day may be a lot different than what I thought it was. This day may be a lot different than what I thought it was. Because every conversation that starts with, hey, I need to talk to you, could be representing a few different things, right? So, as from a boss to an employee, it doesn't mean automatically that there's going to be a problem, but if you are somebody who has had a few different situations where maybe you have been laid off before, it started with something, hey, I need to talk to you. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, go ahead and put some blue hearts into the chat. Go ahead and put some blue hearts into the chat. If if somebody's sitting there and they are thinking about when they hear, hey, I need to talk to you, and then all of a sudden they start remembering that, okay, last time I heard this discussion, I got laid off, right? So they're going to have a different reaction to that immediate auto response, right? It's going to be a different reaction to it. You're going to have two totally different scenarios. You got one that's upbeat and positive and ready to go and thinking all of what's possible, and then you have one that is thinking of what is very, very familiar and very visceral. So when we're talking about the appraisal, it's important for people to understand that each and every one of us is unique. Every one of us is special and unique. There's not one of us that is a duplicate, right? Because the reason why that is because we've all had our own experiences. We've all had situations where we've had different people in our journey. We've had different experiences in our journey. We've had things that were positive. We've had things that weren't so positive. And so we have developed our auto response, which is our appraisal. So this is why when you're sitting there and you're playing the game phone, right? The game of phone tag, right? Which we all know that what that is where a story begins and ends, and you have an entirely different story by the time that it ends. And I can actually share with you something that happened with me yesterday, right? Yesterday, I happened to I needed something very menial, right? It was like I just needed a piece of paper. I needed to sign it. It was no big deal. I was at the desk. And it happened to be where it is that I had just resigned, right? I had just resigned from this organization. And so I just was waiting for the piece of paper. Well, there was another person that was sitting there, or not sitting there, standing there, and they were talking to the lady that I needed to get attention from. So I was just waiting. I wasn't like in any hurry or anything like that. So I just held back. Well, it determined that there was somebody who was in upper management, and they were having a discussion about that person was no longer with the company. It was surprising to me because I didn't know that that was even in the works, but I was like, okay, what I'm surprised, but I don't have any skin in this game, so I'm going to just like hold back. Meanwhile, what happens is that the person that I was needing attention, she asked me to go ahead and bring this lady to the accounting department, of which I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with that building, and I know who to bring her to in order to discuss invoicing and everything like that. And to be honest with you, my auto response was, I don't want to go into the building that I just resigned from. I don't want to do that. That's my auto response. My interpretation was, it's not that big of a deal, and I'll be helpful. You're a good friend of mine that I've been, that I enjoy having, conversation with, and I'll help you out. So I'll go ahead and I'll bring this lady to the next building. So that's exactly what I do. I brought her to the next building, of which was the building that I had resigned from. It was a little bit awkward, but I didn't have a problem doing it. And I walked her to where that department where she needed to be. It's the conversation then, as I'm standing there, is about how this upper management person was no longer with the organization. And it was kind of like confusing, and not only that, but it was very, very, unexpected from now three parties, right? The lady that I brought over, myself, and also the person that was head of the department that I brought her to. I did not know whether it was a fact or not at all. I was surprised, but I wasn't going to add anything to it because it wasn't anything that I was part of. So I'm like, I don't know if that's the fact. I would be surprised, but I'm sure this person can go ahead and verify that, and then, everything's going to work out fine. So I said that. The lady left. She left her card. She left, and she left the building. I looked to the head of the department, and I said, I have no idea. I said, you can figure that out. So that person went to now the head manager, the COO, right? Of which is somebody who is a little bit militant, somebody who does not like a lot of, rumors, does not like a lot of drama, right? And everything in that sense. So next thing I know, as I left the building and before I got to the building next to it, the COO came running and had a look on his face as if like he wanted to talk to me. And so I said, okay. So he goes, hey, Sean, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, or whatever your name is. Well, I'm a big person when it comes to names. I'm a big person that you know my name, right? Because I've had it throughout my entire life that my name has been misspelled throughout, right? And that's one of the reasons why I use Dutch, because there's only one way to spell Dutch, and it's very simple. And Phoenix is my spirit animal. So my first name is Shane. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, "You mean Shane?" And he goes, "Yeah, okay." And I'm like, all of a sudden, we have now an issue between me and the COO. And he comes to me and he says, "This person just told me that you said that the head manager is no longer with the organization." He goes, "That's simply not true. They had car problems, and there's still with there's not true." And I said, "Okay, I did not start that conversation. I have no idea how it got started from that standpoint, but I can just tell you it was not me." He goes, "Well, who told you?" Okay. Now, this person happens to be somebody who um, he was in the management of a police force. So he has a very presence to him of which he utilizes some, skill set to where he's trying to put you on the spot. I didn't feel comfortable with that at all. And I'm not the type of guy that's going to sit there and continue a drama. And I'm not going to sit there and throw somebody underneath the bus, especially when there is many different changes that have occurred. And I really don't care one way or another about this thing. I care about the person that may have made a mistake, and I'm not going to do that. So I literally told the man that I'm not going to do that. And then he just brushed me off, and then he, like, literally rubbed my shoulder and walking away. So I sat there and I said, "Listen, you can dismiss me all that you want, but I'm not wrong." And then he turned around. He says, "Nobody's going to get in trouble." I said, "If you can give me an assurance that somebody's not going to get in trouble, I'll tell you who it is that I believe has the misinformation." He goes, "Okay, who is it?" And I told him who it was. That then became an entirely different scenario, right? It became an entirely different scenario because now all of a sudden you have a story that started one way and it ended up being a totally different ending, right? Ended up being a totally different ending. The person was not let go from the organization whatsoever, or she did not leave the organization whatsoever. She merely had car trouble and she wasn't there at the time. The person that was at the desk had got it misinformation and had got it twisted where somebody else was let go from the organization and therefore associated it to that head manager. When that individual came walking up to me the way that they did, I had an immediate reaction to that. "Hey, good morning, wonderful viewers." I had an immediate reaction to that. My auto response was, "I'm going to brace up." Thank you so much. I I had to brace up, right? I had to brace up because this guy is coming to me as if like he's going to try to change my day. And so I braced up and I'm like, "You're talking about me?" It's like, my name is Shane, it's not Sean, right? And I don't particularly like this individual in the first place because of my dealings that I've had with him and also the way that I've seen him deal with other people. I don't like it. So he comes walking up and he just is like, he's going to intimidate. He's well physical, right? He works out quite a lot. And, so he believes that his physical stature is a skill set for his intimidation, putting somebody on the spot. So when that happens, what all of a sudden occurs is that, I'm sitting there and saying, "Yeah, no, this isn't going to happen. You're not going to intimidate me in any way, right?" So when I'm looking at it from that standpoint, I'm thinking, okay, we need to chill out and understand that this isn't what it is that occurred. And so that's what ended up happening. So when we're sitting there and we're looking at it from the standpoint of how this all got going, it all started from our auto response. Everybody's auto response was different, right? Everybody's auto response was different. Somebody had heard something and it had them believe that this person was no longer with the company. Another person had an auto response is, well, we need to stop this. Another person's auto response was, oh my God, what are we going to do if this person's no longer with the company? My auto response was, I don't have any skin in this game, right? But my auto response when I was approached was, I need to brace up. See, we appraise the situation. We appraise the situation. Big, wonderful to see you. I'm going to bring you up. I promise you. It's just that we're doing something that I want to make sure that I get this out. We appraise the situation immediately, right? Remember our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system, you notice the word auto is in there. Our autonomic nervous system controls our breathing, controls our heart rate, controls our muscle tension, controls all these things that have something to do with our auto response. And so it's very important to understand that when we have a two-person story, we have multiple sides, and the first is our appraisal. So when that appraisal is being done, we also have to understand that everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different journey. Everybody is special and unique. Jen, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for the donuts. Everybody is special and unique, and therefore we need to understand that they are appraising it maybe different than what you are. That they are appraising the situation differently than what you are. And obviously, if they're appraising it different, they're now going to what? Interpret it differently. If they interpret it differently, guess what? They're going to then put an emotional attachment to it differently. This is how two people can be in the same space, same circumstance, and have two totally different stories. This is how this happens because we have our appraisal, which is something that is our auto response, which is driven by our journey, right, in the past, and then we have everything that goes along with it, that follows that part. So my point is that when you think that you're responding to the moment, what you need to understand is that our auto response or our appraisal is literally carrying something from before that moment. And so we need to understand that, and that would help us be able to communicate with one another. It also give us compassion, it give us empathy, it give us the opportunity to allow people to be able to speak, to allow people to be able to express their opinion, to allow people to be able to get out what it is that they are feeling. Because sometimes we don't even know why it is that we feel a certain way. We don't necessarily expect to think that something that happened to us 20 years ago is going to affect a decision that we're going to make today. But the deeper reality is that it definitely will. It definitely will and can. And so when it is discussed about how can two people be in the exact same situation, exact same circumstance, exact same conversation, exact same room, and then have two totally different stories as a result, that's how. That's how it works. Is because it all starts with our appraisal and everything's a domino effect behind it. All right. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about the interpretation piece. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the interpretation piece. As you know now, it all starts with the appraisal because we're going to be interpreting that appraisal emotional response, that auto response. So this is something that I think is going to really help if you see it from the standpoint that there are different pieces to each and every response that we do. Okay? And so that is going to allow you to be able to see, and it also allows you to be intentional and see why things work, where things work, and also to be able to see what's possible as a result. Okay? Listen, take today's moment with you. I fully believe that if you're able to see clearly why things work, where things work, that you can now be intentional. See, the difference between before the episode and now is that you just learned that you have the choice. The choice is yours now. See, that's what the uplift is all about. Real growth, clear direction, expanding what's possible for you.